I was chased by an Uber driver. I was coming home from taking a train for a work trip, and it was about 11 at night. I would usually travel the next day, but I had to be home early for a family thing. The train station where I lived at the time was outside and had no security whatsoever. Granted, I was already a little bit on edge. After waiting 20 minutes for an Uber all alone, I was relieved to see my Uber driver. He had an accent and was from a Middle Eastern country, and the first thing he asked was if I was too. But I often get mistaken for being different nationalities, so it felt normal. I politely said no, and at first everything was normal. We made small talk since the drive was so long. But then he started making odd comments, saying I was beautiful, asking if I had an American boyfriend, and if my parents wanted me married. I dodged his questions, but then as we were 5 minutes away from my apartment, he asked if I was doing anything that night, since it was a Friday. I said no, and I didn't plan on it. He then asked if I lived alone, and I do, but I was getting scared, so I said that I had 3 roommates, and they were expecting me. That seemed to make him stop and he remained silent the whole ride. I then get notified that I had a package. Unfortunately, my apartment would charge if he didn't retrieve the packages after a certain time frame. As soon as we reach my apartment, I get out and I use my key card to go to the package room, which was in a separate room from my apartment entrance. I look outside and he's still parked out front looking around. The way the apartment works is that you have to go outside to go to the actual entrances. One entrance has stairs, the other with the elevator was in the parking garage. I took a deep breath, holding my package, and I start to run. He gets out and he starts to run, chasing me. Using my key card, I make it to the stairs entrance and slam the door and run up the stairs. As I get into my room, I look out my window and I saw him still outside his car. Being on the 3rd floor, my lights were on and he looked right at my window, and he stayed parked the whole night, and then he eventually drove away. I reported him on Uber and was extremely cautious the whole week, but I still don't know what he was planning to do, and I'm grateful that my parents made me do running as a kid. So creepy Uber driver, let's never meet again. Sorry if this is a bit long. I know this isn't a therapist office, but this has bothered me for a long time, and I wanted to just get it off my chest. This happened June 2018 in Portland, Oregon. I understand I acted like an idiot in this situation. Since then I have become much more observant, cautious, and honestly, much more paranoid. I went dancing with friends and I was really drunk by midnight. Unfortunately, this was back when I had little money, and I realized you could save money by eating very little before going out, and it would take far fewer drinks to get drunk. So I was so drunk I barely remember my friend ordering me an Uber home. My phone was dead, of course. I can vaguely recall them helping me into the car and telling me to get home safe. I don't remember greeting the driver or even the first minute or so, but soon after getting in, he asked how my night was and if I smoked. Honestly, I was just thinking about bed at this point, so I sort of just slurred out that I did sometimes. He then offered me a joint, and this is the moment where I start to get nervous and begin paying attention. I tell him something like I'm really tired and just ready to get home. I think he says something about it being an indica-based joint and that it made for great sleep. Once again, I was saying something not exactly like no, but not really a yes either, which he takes as a yes, I'll take that joint answer. Once again, I'm still drunk enough I can barely see straight or even speak clearly. So when he says, okay, well I'll have to cancel the ride really quick because I can't give it to you while I'm on the clock, or something to that effect. It takes me a second to realize how dangerous that is. And by the time I start to say something, he has canceled the ride and pulls over. We were in an area just east of the Hawthorne Bridge, I think, and it was totally secluded. Some empty parking lots, a closed auto body shop, and no one in sight. It's starting to hit me. I'm now in the car, not with an Uber driver, but with some stranger. I can't call anyone, and he's trying to give me some weed that could have anything in it. For the next minute or so, we're pretty quiet. Or I just can't remember any small talk he tried to make because I was beginning to panic. And every time he handed me the joint, I would just take fake hits, just breathing it into my mouth and not into my lungs. I felt tired, clumsy, and weak. That kind of drunk where you're almost to the point of nausea, and I knew I couldn't do much anything to defend myself at that point. I remember vividly being fixated for a moment on the fact that I didn't even have a pair of keys to defend myself with, as my building used fobs for just about everything, and I didn't take my mail key with me. As I'm freaking out, I look up to see this guy sort of noticing, and I make eye contact with him in the mirror. He was staring at me, but I couldn't read his expression. Finally, he says something along the lines of, well, let's get out of here. I tell him I'll just call another Uber to get home. thinking at this point that it might be safer to walk. And he says, "No, I still have your address. I'll just take you home." For a moment I was relieved. I guess I wanted to believe him so badly that I would get home safe if I believed him. And I tried to calm myself down, thinking he hadn't actually done anything threatening. Maybe he was just your typical stoner guy and I'm overreacting. And at this time I lived on PSU campus in downtown Portland in the southwest area of the city. He is driving me north on the east side of the river. There are several bridges to our left, and as he keeps moving north he has several opportunities to take an exit, to hop over the river and get me back downtown. He keeps skipping them. We keep passing bridge after bridge that could get me home. Up in northeast Portland, there are some large industrial areas that can get very isolated at night, and Portland in general is surrounded by lots of forests. So I knew he could have me in a secluded area really quickly. After he passes like the fourth exit for a bridge, pretty sure it was the Broadway Bridge, I've been racking my brain for a way to make him actually take me home and say something to the effect of, "Hey, my boyfriend is waiting for me at home," which was true, though I said it in a very meek way. My driver says nothing, but he did take the next exit for a bridge and basically hung a giant U-turn that started taking me home. Even as we're on the west side of town heading south, I'm still shaking and have my hand on the door handle, thinking about just hopping out at a red light the closer we get to my apartment. My phone is completely dead, and he honestly still has several chances to hop onto the nearby highways and speed out of the city. We're getting pretty close to my apartment now, and I'm once again trying to convince myself I'm being paranoid about some stoner that can't navigate the city. Although a few minutes before I was so scared I was crying. So once we get about 2 blocks from my apartment, I lie and tell him it's easiest to just stop here and he can just let me out here. Again, he doesn't say anything but does slow the car. I'm flooded with relief and even feel myself smile, but when I go to open the door it's locked. I try to lift the lock mechanism manually but it won't budge. I look up at him instinctually to see what's up, and he's got his head turned almost fully toward me. Shoulders still facing the road, smiling at me. The first fucking smile I've seen. It looked so mocking, and he just did not reach his eyes at all. I just started crying and asking him to open the door. I was so freaked out and still very drunk, and thank God he did. I would never forget the sensation of vulnerability, not just being drunk in his car with no way to contact anyone, but even as I got out of the car I kept feeling like he would somehow grab the back of my shirt and pull me back in, as silly as it sounds. When I got home I found out that my boyfriend had actually gone out with friends last minute and wasn't even home. He wouldn't even have known until much later if I had gotten back safe. The next day I convinced myself I was freaking out over nothing, which I realized still could be the case, but in my gut I had truly felt in danger the night before. Technically this guy could have been totally harmless, but I still think I should have texted my friend and had her report him. The big thing that made me think of this was recently hearing about how Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, would go for practice runs, picking up hitchhikers and seeing if he could get the passengers, or potential victims, to trust him, or how far out of his comfort zone he would push them without saying anything. Obviously this guy wasn't Ed Kemper, but I hate wondering if that night was a practice run of sorts for my Uber driver. Thanks to whoever reads this whole thing through, I'm at a point in my life now where I'm realizing how much danger I put myself in when I was younger, and how truly depressed I was, and it has made me both surprised and deeply grateful that I'm still here.